where were you born or where did you grow up?
So I was born in Baltimore, and I grew up in a little place called Sherwood Forest.
No, you did not.
I did. I did.
Did Robin Hood live there?
He does. I grew up on Nottingham Hill. I know, not to like give out my whole address or anything, but yeah, just north, a few miles by river, really, of Annapolis.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up on the East Coast?
Oh my goddess. Oh my gosh. Whew. I grew up in a very competitive environment.
You did.
Based in human form.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, you know, nature is that way too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was very competitive. I grew up amongst, I would say, elite, and I had a very interesting upbringing, and also super privileged, super beautiful in so many ways. But it was confusing. The privilege and the elitism, it was quite confusing for a young, very hypersensitive, HSP, empathic child. Just like things were kind of confusing for me, I think, but also not, right? In other ways. Yeah.
So we mirror each other that way.
Probably. I'm not surprised.
Me neither. That's why I had all those looks on my face as you were talking.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I grew up in Orange County, California.
Okay.
With just a little privilege around me.
Right.
And
just a little.
It was very confusing because I didn't feel like I could be myself.
Yeah.
And I was taught not to be myself.
Yeah.
I was taught to be something that everybody else needed me to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like I should share maybe a little more.
Please do.
Okay. Sherwood Forest is a beautiful place, and I have had such incredible opportunities for healing there, and for acceptance and love of this place. And it's also a kids camp. And so growing up, every summer we would go to the kids camp, and everything was scored. Everything. So you take play, you take this fun, right?
I'm tired already. I have no competitive nature whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's all the Pisces in me. I'm like, oh God.
I'm a Vedic Pisces, so I feel you. But it just took every activity and just smeared it with competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that was tough as a kid. And,
I bet it was.
So you go through school, and I know some of your listeners, or so many people, just have like already trauma with school and having to like sit still and do what you're told, right? And then summer, it's like this freedom place. And it was in so many ways. And Sherwood is such a beautiful place. I grew up in the woods on the river, but everything was competitive and scored. And I felt just so watched all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played the piano, and that was like state ranked. And anyway, I was pretty much born and bred to be an athlete.
An athlete?
An athlete. Yeah.
What kind of an athlete?
As many of my also peers were as well, like All-Americans, even some Olympians. Pretty wild. In this tiny, tiny little place.
What kind of athlete?
So I was not necessarily in camp but I turned out to be really good at field hockey and lacrosse. So that was, and now I'm a backpacker. I've taken all of that, and I'm a dancer, and I'm many other things than those things, right? I am so many things, but now
you're good at lacrosse and field hockey.
Yeah.
I am so shitty at sports.
That's okay.
I was a cheerleader.
And we need
and
those.
I was bad at that too.
And you're a psychic cheerleader.
I am. Well, yes, that came later. Well, no, it didn't really, but the title did. Yeah. But the cheerleading, I had to learn how to do. And it was part of the being what other people needed me to be.
Yeah.
But it was competitive.
I
was on an ESPN. So we have that overlap.
That can't be mine. Oh, no, that's yours.
No, it's definitely mine. And that's unfortunate. Okay. So we're going to turn that off. Yeah. We're going to turn that off. That has never happened before. But my dad is on, my dad is gets past Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry about that, everyone.
I hope Dad's okay.
He'll be fine. Yes. He's calling about what we were talking about before we got on this.
I do want to say
yes
to all the cheerleaders out there, I have seen some cheerleader competitions, not that we have to go competition style, but talk about a sport. For real. I mean, cheerleaders work their little butts off. Like
they do.
Yeah. It's
more than people realize.
Oh.
In the competitive. Yeah.
They're acrobats.
Arena. Yeah.
They're acrobats.
Well, yes. I went to gymnastics every Thursday.
Yeah. There you go.
And had practice after school for 2.5 hours and on Saturday mornings. Mm-hmm. It was my life.
Yep.
Yeah, it was my life. But we were on ESPN, and that was
amazing.
Cool.
That is cool. So cool.
It was cool. Yeah, I mean, it was cool. We were not half bad. I think we got like 8th or something like that. But yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, not to overshadow your story at all. But
no.
Any sport, terrible. Clumsy. Be kind of, not in my body. Better at picking flowers and like staring at butterflies and talking to animals.
Yum. I love that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's also a good
and singing.
Zone.
Lots of singing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We get along just
fine.
Yeah.
In my own world.
I do think it's important to say though, competition, the hyper competitive culture that so many people unfortunately get swallowed in our culture. It's a systemic issue that I feel you. Like, I feel like we're creating a love army, right? Like with really helping.
A love army.
Yeah. Like helping ourselves go into our shadow, uncovering. And I tell my clients this all the time. It's really a process of unbecoming. We're unconditioning. We're taking that conditioning and we're stripping it down. And for me, it really is about really understanding this on a cultural level and wanting to shift the culture, open our hearts more, and whatever that means. I will also say that competition isn't all bad, right?
No.
It also helps us strive to be
a better version of who we are.
Versions. And also it gave me I'm so grateful for my athletics, because when going through really hard times, it really gave me a space that I could use my voice, find my voice, and even just focus on anything else besides the stuff, like the really
stuff in your head.
I'm like, can we cuss on here?
Yes.
The shit that was happening.
Yes.
And I know I know a little bit about you from your bio, and we have some similar experiences, as so many people do and so many young girls do. And so for me, it was a huge outlet, a place where I could feel more empowered and a place where I could regain and reclaim myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good that it was a good experience for you, but also competitive and lots of perfectionism.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of
undoing that perfection.
I told you I have that Virgo moon. So.
Name something you can't live without.
Ooh, love. Love.
Great answer.
Love.
You're on the right podcast.
Yeah, right? Love and trust. Trust is I was just talking about like the life preserver, the safe space. Like, I don't think I could live without trust. And of course, it's like, I always say it's tuning a guitar string, right? We're always just tuning a guitar string. We're finding center.
I love that.
Something else I think
I love that visual.
I'll let it land.
Thanks.
Something else, speaking of tuning, that I've really felt has probably saved my life is my voice. Music.
Yeah.
Dance.
Yeah.
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 Rhythm.
I love to dance. Mm-hmm. I also love music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound. And I know, even when when people can't hear, right? Like they're still moved by the vibrations.
Oh, yeah. Changes your vibration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought that so many times in some really hard places, dark places in my teens, like just singing in the car, I know we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, talk about, a place that is a lifesaver.
And safe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell me something unique or interesting about you that only those close to you would know.
Oh my gosh. Okay, the first thing that popped into my head is I can jiggle my eyes, my eyeballs. I know this is so weird and but it's unique. And when I get a psychic hit, my eyes will ding ding ding, like they'll jitter.
So that is your confirmation.
It is one of them.
Okay.
It's interesting.
That's super cool.
It's like when I get a download.
Right.
Yeah. My eyes will, and you have to be kind of close to see it.
That's fascinating.
It's pretty weird.
I mean,
most people don't know that about me. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, I am weird. I will tell you, I want to be, I would much rather be weird.
Weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Me too.
Yeah.
What are you naturally gifted in?
I would say my voice.
Do you love to sing?
I love to sing, and I've always loved it. I remember
Me too.
I was probably like 3 or 4 singing some opera style. I was trained as a classical pianist as a young child. And I wasn't actually singing, some like, opera, but I was singing in an operatic voice, and I was very young, and I was doing it in the house, and my mom like busted in and was like, "We're going to send you to voice lessons." And I was like, "No, I don't want." I got really scared. I think because at that point I was already feeling the pressure of everything being judged, and I just wanted it for me.
Oh.
So I still look back and think like, oh man, I kind of wish I was a little more encouraged in that way, but I trust, right? I trust. So I sang throughout the years, mostly in the shower, safe space, car, and then the back of the bus with my old friend, my elementary friend.
Cute.
And then the first time I ever sang in front of people was my baccalaureate, which is basically graduation of high school. I sang in front of 300 people. And
All by yourself?
Yeah. And I was accompanied by
solo?
Yeah, with a pianist who was off stage, and my knees were shaking. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of things without any training. We're going to get to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely past lifetime stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your favorite thing to do when you're expressing love?
Like in terms of love languages or just in general?
What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, touch, my kinesthetic abilities. I also love making people food, but
You do.
I do.
That's really sweet.
But
because she just offered me some pear. With Meyer lemon on it.
Yes, and chocolate.
And chocolate.
It's true. It's
you
definitely
like feeding.
Yeah, and it's not like all the time either. I'm not. Yeah, I think it's definitely a love language when I really love someone. And
Appreciate them.
mhm, mhm.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's
And
the same reason why I give gifts.
Yeah, gift giver. But I feel like I've been talking about singing quite a bit, but the other thing is channeling and singing through, channeling love through my voice or through really whatever I do. Yeah.
I think that's the sparkle you see in my eyes.
Yes.
What was it like to grow up in your family? Tell me about it.
Wow. Well, oh, geez. Like, how much do I want to say? I grew up with two very incredibly successful parents who had.
I love that you air quoted them.
Right? Because, like, what is success?
That's right. I ask that question all the time with my clients.
What is success?
Yeah. Or with people in general.
Yeah. They are and were. My mom's now passed. But my dad is still working and they're incredibly successful. My mom, bless her soul, she was an immigrant from Belgium. My parents actually met in medical school in Belgium. Super sweet story. She was working as the ice cream girl. This is how I hear it. She was working at the cafe at the med school, and my dad would go and get ice cream from her. So in my head, she's the ice cream girl. And finally he asked her out.
That's adorable.
It's really freaking cute. And, my dad learned French to go to medical school in Belgium. I mean, they're highly intelligent people, highly intelligent, and just really kicked ass at their careers. I'm like, I'm such a proud daughter. And my mom came to the States, let's see, probably 70s, 80s, and started a career as an immigrant female. She started in New York and then came down to the DC area.
Wow.
And in Maryland. And I know she went through a lot of hard times.
I'm sure she did.
A lot of adversity and just that field, in the medical field. She put up with a lot of shit.
Especially because she was female.
Yeah, I remember hearing some stories, about like the doctor's changing room. And so she's like, okay, well, and she would go in there and then men would, give her shit for being in there. And she's like, well, it says doctor. I'm a doctor. So anyway, she created her own OBGYN practice in Annapolis and has literally delivered thousands of babies, and had a private practice there. And my dad worked and still works at Shock Trauma Medical Center in Baltimore, University of Maryland. He's also a teacher, professor, and often gets the Golden Apple Award, meaning one of the best professors. And yeah, I grew up with really successful parents. And so they also weren't necessarily around all the time. And there was just this understanding about that, mom and dad are doing some really good work. Really good work. My dad's a trauma surgeon. And yeah, my mom's delivering lives and also saving them. And my dad was saving lives. It's just like a lot to look up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did they have really high standards for you as well and expectations?
I feel like they did. And yet, yeah, there's, I think there was also a lot of acceptance. But as a young child, I didn't quite get that, I think. So
you felt a lot of pressure.
I felt a lot of pressure.
To live up to.
A lot. Because, people would say, my dad is somewhat famous, and then my mom was somewhat famous for just more of a local celebrity.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, famous in terms of like surgeons. And so I got a lot of that, like, oh, your dad was on the TV. But my dad's so humble in a lot of ways. Like, he wouldn't even tell us when he was being televised.
Mhm.
And, it was just interesting.
My dad was on the TV too.
Yeah.
For a different reason.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. He was a prosecutor.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah, a deputy DA, and so he did famous cases down in Orange County, California.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a DA agent. He took down Timothy Leary and the Black Panthers.
Whoa.
Yeah, he was undercover and yeah, so he was a hotshot, like a little bit different than
different,
a little different.
but
yeah, but
can relate.
Yeah, but he was on TV pretty regularly being interviewed by the news because of the case he was doing. And he would only lose, he lost one case in 20 years and was very well known. And we couldn't give out our information. And
wow.
we couldn't have people over and we couldn't give out our phone number. And
couldn't have people over.
Yeah. Well, that was other reasons, I think, in
Okay.
addition.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, but
bummer on the slumber parties, though.
It was just we lived a very sheltered and very naive existence, all three of us. I have two older sisters because I think my dad saw so much. And he primarily did gang violence.
Wow.
So, I think because, just even him being a cop, he's a cop before he was anything. And so just seeing, a lot of different things out there. He raised 3 daughters and he was he taught us to be pretty hypervigilant. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be afraid of just about everything.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, so we come from kind of like same but different, right?
Yes.
Like I came from a trauma surgeon,
Yes.
I did.
You did.
What's interesting is I feel like, I don't know, in a way I was kind of like a wild child. But I think it was really more my spirit. But my dad,
Yeah. I could see that.
He was, I think, protective in certain ways, but mostly I feel like they were pretty encouraging.
That's great.
They also weren't like around all the time.
Yeah.
So sneaking out wasn't very hard.
Yeah.
But they also like knew kind of how to unwind, I feel like, and party and so it's interesting. I didn't feel so sheltered, even though there was a lot of room for that. Yeah it could have been, I guess.
Well, I think that was intentional. They didn't expect any of us to move away to a different state or leave or so I'm the only daughter that actually graduated from college and moved away. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I celebrate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
wow. It's incredible.
Thanks. Okay.
I will say I did also I have a brother. I do have an older brother as well.
You do?
I do. Yeah, we're very different, and yet it's kind of sweet to have somebody, cut so close from the same cloth. I feel like we were, in a way. I got this thrill out of I always thought he was like trying to kill me. I know other people can understand what I'm saying. Like when you're a little girl who has an older brother, just
you thought he was trying to kill you?
I'm sure he was trying to kill me. I also had a near-death experience at 3. That was my first near-death experience.
I had one at 18 months.
What, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some interesting parallels.
We do. Yeah.
But really, I know now, and I knew back then too that he was playing, right? Like, and I actually got this like huge thrill out of just barely being able to get away from, him chasing me or,
Oh, interesting. You had that kind of relationship. That's
oh
what
yeah,
you mean.
totally.
Okay. Yeah.
My mom would call him her little devil.
Oh,
but really,
okay.
he's also extremely kind, and he's such an incredible soul. But yeah, I have distinct memories of growing up and getting locked out of the house, and I kind of loved it though, because then I learned how I could, break in without breaking anything, and like get really good at like climbing, or I don't know. I just like had this ability. I've always been really comfortable on the edge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So like whether that's the edge of a roof or the edge of a mountain or,
Interesting.
the edge of a yoga pose, right? Just it's like tuning that guitar string,
Huh.
like finding the edge. I love that place called the edge.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I could say that I'm comfortable teetering, but I definitely do not feel comfortable on the edge of a mountain or the edge of a roof.
Yeah.
I was afraid of heights until probably maybe 6 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were a lot braver younger. It took me a while to grow into who I am.
Well, and I'm curious, thinking about my brother, like I wonder how much
he influenced that.
Maybe.
Yeah, I didn't have a
my
brother.
mom.
I had 2 sisters, and they were older than me. And they were, for lack of a better explanation, they were constantly fighting and almost killing each other. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I came along. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They had a very difficult relationship. They still do.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right. I mean, all 3 of us don't get along. Yeah. But I don't think that was really encouraged or fostered, for as much as I think it was difficult for my parents to deal with. I also think that is part of having a parent with a personality disorder, because they light fires so that the blame is off of them. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they, stir stuff up.
Yeah.
Intentionally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or as we like to say, there's always one man out,
Yeah.
Not all 3 of us are always in favor.
Mm-hmm.
There's always someone who is on the shit list for something that they've done.
Yeah. I without going too deep into it, I can relate in my own way as well. And yeah. I'm sorry to hear you went through it, and I know it's like just so much incredible soil for the growth, right? Mm-hmm. Really knowing who you are, who we are, who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a part of who I am, but I've had many years to be in a place of acceptance of that, as well as do the work around any of the trauma associated
It's such a gift.
It is.
It
made me really strong.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I feel you, sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Talking about love.
Yeah.
You want to talk about love?
Yes.
Let's talk about acceptance,
lot of compassion.
forgiveness, compassion.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And, shout out to EMDR and neurofeedback.
All the therapies.
And, the sacred depths of coaching and mentors and really
holistic practitioners.
And being brave enough to go into our own shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and attachment theory and
All of
just
that.
like all of that
Yep.
juicy goodness that is helping the unconditioning of it all
Yes.
to come back to wholeness.
Yeah. The process of unbecoming, as you said.
The process of unbecoming,
Mm-hmm.
which is really just, it's really learning, like what we're talking about, right? It's learning how to love all the parts. It's very IFS.
Yes.
But it's just like, it's, archetype.
It seems so straightforward, but it really isn't.
Yeah, it's funny. It's so complex.
It's so easy to say.
It's so complex. And
logically, it makes sense.
But it also is really simple to remember.
When
we're having, so I love to say this phrase, the divine catalyst. It's like that moment where we witness ourselves in a negative thought pattern and we catch ourselves, right? And just, be the witness, And, not to like, how is it, Marianne Williamson's book, Return to Love? But it's cliche and yet it's so true. It's so simple.
Yeah.
And how can we really learn to love those parts, all those parts of our shadow that just need some attention and love. Coaching for 10 years now, I always hear that same thing, I feel like, and I know you know what I'm talking about, and it's like what I found was everyone, when we really get into their fears, it's like everyone wants to be seen and heard.
Yep.
So that they can feel respected, accepted, and then ultimately loved. Which really, of course, is belonging, which Brene Brown talks about. And it's just like, it's so true. We need to do that for ourselves first.
Yep. Because that's how we teach other people to treat us. And
reparent ourselves in that, like, what wasn't I given? Okay. How can I accept, forgive? That's a whole nother, it's like a whole nother full podcast, but sure, like, here now. But really, how can I give those things to my little one that I really, really wanted and might not ever get? And that's okay. I can accept that. But truly, it's like, that's where the real self-compassion comes. And that's where I believe wholeness comes from. Is
I agree.
Security, loving ourselves, all of it. All of it.
Yep. However we show up.
Oof. And taking ownership, I think, is really important too. Like, can we reflect on ourselves, take responsibility, responsibility, ownership of like, I could have done that better. Or whatever better means, right? I think better really is just like, who do I want to be? And who am I, who's my higher self? Who's my higher self? What does alignment really mean to me? Like this art of soul alignment, as I like to call it. It's like really knowing who you are, and then nobody can ever take that away from you when you really know. And I loved what you said when we were chatting earlier, if it's okay to say, when you were like, just not giving a fuck.
Yeah. Unfuckwithable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's being in alignment, in my opinion. Or your true north, right? Is knowing yourself so well that when somebody contests or challenges who that is, that you don't question, or you don't waver, if or unless you need to, right? But really truly understanding who you are.
Yeah.
And not letting other people define who that is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. That's why I think it's so healthy to have a value system, that true north, that lighthouse within. And, you mentioned like other people like whatever, they may say, and it's also like, and our shadows.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think it's so important to do this shadow work,
Mm-hmm.
to love it up, because we are, of course, like we all know this, right? We're our worst critics. It's not so much now. Actually, it's really nice to reflect on that. But, when that voice in our heads is like the meanest voice we could hear, and we would never say any of those things to our best friend, let's say, like for me, it's becoming so much smaller and smaller, which is really a beautiful testament to the work. I don't even know if it really happens anymore, but what I'm getting at is like,
I don't think it happens anymore either.
And that's the true non-fuckable with.
I think you just pointed that out to me too. I don't even think I noticed. But yeah, I don't think I have negative self-talk anymore. As a matter of fact, I've gotten to the point where when other people do it, I can't be around it. It's almost like my tolerance for it is so narrow.
Yeah.
That I find myself sitting with them and saying, "Hold on, wait, what did you just say?"
Yeah.
Are you aware of what you just said?
Yeah.
Right? And to go back a little bit, you were talking about something, because people are a mirror.
Yeah, totally.
So if we haven't done shadow work, right?
Yeah. You're like, trigger.
Yeah, all the time, right? It's like, when are you going to work on this?
Mm-hmm. That's that blame saying of like pointing the finger at somebody else. And
taking responsibility and ownership. Speaking of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those fingers are pointing right back at you.
Yep.
It's so cliche and it's so true. These cliches, they're simple and they make sense,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a complete segue. And I love it. What was one of your earliest memories of feeling love?
Feeling love. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh. I'm just going deeper and deeper. Yeah. Okay.
Cute.
It's pretty cute. I'm about 2. I can remember pretty far back. I'm 2. I'm in a crib and I'm standing. The sun is shining behind me, and I'm watching my mother come up the stairs. And it's a straight shot into my bedroom and towards the window, which is directly east. And so I remember my mom calling me Sunshine, and she that was a nickname that stuck, Darling and Sunshine. And she says it's from those moments, and I remember those moments. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And there's a full circle story to that it's a long
story.
Well, I'm like, how quickly could I say it? It's a fascinating one.
Okay. Do you want to take us on the journey?
Okay. Well, it's certainly a journey of who I am.
Okay.
So I'll see if I can not do the long version, but essentially I was in a mountain biking incident. I don't like to say accident.
We're going to get to that. You've covered a lot of things that we're going to get to, so this is good.
Okay. Is it good? Keep going. Okay.
Please do.
Yeah, I was chasing a guy past my intuition, and it's just like, always listen to that intuition. Always.
It's a doozy, right?
Yes.
When you don't.
Talk about a doozy.
Yeah.
It's a smush smash.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's gotten me into some trouble as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sister. 2 witches cackling on the mic, It's so true, though.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we were just talking about that earlier, too, that intuition.
And for men, yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was pushing past tired, and I was coming down a mountain trying to keep up with my then lover. And I was too loose. I was mountain biking. So my grip wasn't tight enough and I was gaining too much speed. And I launched off of a jump. And next thing I knew, I had broken 7 vertebrae, including my neck, 5 ribs, clavicle is now a steel plate, and I had a traumatic brain injury, among other injuries.
Yeah.
So it was a really deep initiation, not an accident, really deep initiation.
I agree.
Yeah. It was a place to really understand my body. I had come from a background of eating disordered and shaming and sexual assault and rape. So yeah, I see you. And it's hard, right? In our culture too, again, with the conditioning to
back to the perfectionism.
Yeah. And to put all these meanings behind it and labels and pressure on ourselves. So that experience just, the doctor said I was lucky to be alive. I mean, let alone walking. And so with that kind of experience, it's a total reframe, mind, body, soul. And it was a huge, huge experience for me on a body level to really love my body and my mind, because I had a TBI too. So super slowing down, power of meditation. I'd already been meditating and a yogi for years. I had already had that background. But it made me take those tools to another level that,
that's what you're doing today.
Yeah, make me who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And, become my own coach while also having support. I had a whole team. Yeah. So, oh man.
We have that in common.
I know, right? We're survivors. I can tell. Thrivers.
Well, I didn't have the traumatic brain injury, and mine was less about breaking so much. But in almost losing my eyesight,
yes,
I definitely was broken open to try anything and everything that could potentially heal me, other than what my doctors were saying. I was like,
intuition,
not giving up that easily.
Yeah. Follow that knowing. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then the process of healing that, right? It was an initiation for me as well.
Yes.
Yeah. It forced me to leave so many things that were not good for me.
Right. Because you have
no choice.
You have to have boundaries.
Yeah.
And isn't that the most compassionate thing?
Yes.
Right. And I love that. Just like quick tab segue. Brene Brown did the study about compassion, and she found the most common, unmistakably common thing was that the most compassionate people have boundaries of steel. And it's like, oh, because they know what's okay, what's not okay. Discernment so that they won't resent later. And it's like when you're going through something like a disease or a traumatic injury, right? It's like we have to prioritize.
Yeah. So, you have to prioritize you.
Right.
Probably for the first time.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So I went through kind of this month of hell, 6 months into my healing journey. It was like, I'm still in a neck brace. I had to drop out. I was pre-med at the time. Ding, ding. And I had to drop out of school for the second time. Obviously, for the first time was the incident. And I tried to go back to school, and
it wasn't working.
No, my brain wasn't ready for it. And my body either. Like sitting in a chair at a desk is really hard on our bodies. Is. So that was really hard. I'm like, oh my God, what the F do I do? I had become a coach, but I thought I needed like all the accolades.
Of course. You needed the initials too. Yeah.
I wanted the initials at my door.
I know about that.
Yeah. And I have a thirst for knowledge.
Me too.
So.
And getting to the bottom of things.
Yeah. I like to investigate. I also like to experience. So that happened. And then the boyfriend, bless his soul, I really like appreciate him so much, who, and wherever he is now, but he broke up with me and I was devastated. It was like the rug got pulled out from under me, and it was like our 1-year anniversary. Not like, it basically was. And then the landlord told me she was selling a house. So it was just like everything, like the
all
whole,
at once.
everything all at once. I'm still in a neck brace. And I actually had a vision of a white crane, which means so many beautiful things, but it also means to trust in spirit. And it was like the calm before the storm. And within a week after that, my mom fell off of a 2nd-story balcony and became a quadriplegic. Yeah. And so nothing mattered. None of it. All the material stuff. The fact that I could walk was huge.
Right.
So I gave away all my belongings, mostly to friends. So maybe I could get them back later, which I did. But I sold or gave away all of my belongings because the landlord was selling the house. So I had to get out. And I moved back to become one of my mom's caregivers. And it was a long road, months. She was in the ICU and in rehab, and she lived for 17 months. So to circle back. Yeah. And
talk about that lineage.
So it was seven months to the hour that I fell. But what was different is I was wearing a helmet, and she wasn't. Yeah. And so speaking back to prioritizing ourselves, because I had all of that in place, it was imperative, right? I mean, I was still in massive amounts of physical therapy, and I still am.
I'm sure.
But it made me know that I had to prioritize myself and meditate so I would not go freaking crazy, and do my physical therapy so that I could be a caretaker for her and show up for her with love. Speaking the love, yeah. So I would not be a cup that was dried out.
Yeah.
I had to be the well.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
How old were you?
This was 2016.
Okay.
And we couldn't touch, really. I mean, we had to lift her and things like that. But because of the paresthesis, which is a nerve ending burning, she really didn't feel comfortable being touched. And the only where she could really feel it was on her face. So, no cuddling, right? No like giving mom hugs anymore. But I would want to like kind of face cuddle, and she kind of let me a little bit, but she really didn't like it. So what we would do is we would Solsara, eye gaze. So again, talk about love, to be able to really look your mother in the eye. And we did not have a peachy keen whole relationship. It was a hard relationship.
Huh.
And that was...
I didn't expect that being how you've described her.
It was tough. She was a very tough woman. Strong, sensitive on the squishy inside. But, she was a Cancer, a crab.
Mm-hmm.
So she had quite the bite.
Mm.
And also very loving, though, that squishy, deep. And had gone through a lot, and didn't always have the tools of communication, which is a skill.
And also wasn't prioritized until recently.
I know, right?
They didn't know.
No.
I mean,
no.
They're not fully, I can't completely let them off the hook, but,
For sure. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
To have compassion with where our elders have come from, and their elders, our grandparents and theirs. And, you know, my mom was from Belgium. My grandmother was born in a boathouse running from World War I.
Yeah.
My mom was born in 1947.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, these are epigenetically triggering times.
Yeah.
So much compassion and understanding. But, you know, healing is not linear, as we know.
Mm-mm.
So there was still a lot of healing to be done, a lot of things that hadn't been said. And at that point, it didn't matter. At that point, it didn't matter. It was like, forget it. It doesn't matter. Thank God you're alive. And just to be able to have Sulsara moment, like, I mean, come on, like how many people eye gaze with their parents or even have that opportunity? What an incredible gift. And to heal that mother wound was huge. I mean, truly, what a gift. Truly.
Mm-hmm.
So she lived for 17 months. And I was there when she transitioned unexpectedly. We were woken in the middle of the night. And she basically stopped breathing. But then when we got to her, she was trying desperately to breathe. And, you know, the breath is everything. You know, we hear about it like, oh, it's the first thing you do when you're born into this world, and it's the last thing you do when you leave. And to see my mother, who was becoming more and more frail, totally autonomically trying to gasp for air, like I saw, it was just like such a testament to the human experience, honestly, and these human bodies, and really the fight of her soul too. She had a lot of grit. So the room became filled with paramedics. Of course, we called 911, and I felt called to remove myself. And I actually went to that staircase where I would see my mom coming up the staircase when I was 2. And I just started meditating at that top step. And I was meditating. At this point, I had done, you know, definitely had done a lot of work and journey work with psychedelics. I had done Vipassana at this point. I, you know, had an extensive, lot of meditation under my belt, and a lot of openness in my abilities. And I witnessed her soul come over to me, and a portal of light opened, and I felt her presence. I felt her pause there, kind of float for a moment, and then shoo, into this portal of light. And I was just mesmerized by what I had experienced. I mean, mesmerized, like, wow. And it was like this orb of light about 6 feet across, you know? It was just like, oh, wow, I've like read about that stuff. And I got up and I went to the room down the hallway, which was right over her now deceased body. And right when I walked in, you know, we were woken up in the middle of the night, or not the middle of the night, but it was very early in the morning. And right as I was walking in, a ray of sunlight finally just poked through the trees. It was the first light, and I could hear my mom calling me sunshine. It was just like, wow, you can't make this up. It was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It was wild. I know it wasn't a short story. It was definitely
a ride. Spellbinding is amazing.
But it's like to witness that, that level of seeing, that level of feeling, hearing. I took some time. Like, I had to process that. It took me like, yeah, I mean, whatever that even means, right? But maybe I'm still processing it in my own way. But I took like a good year to like really let that sink in. And I remember telling my dad and my another dear family friend what I'd seen when we were with her her dead body, the paramedics had left, and I told them I watched Mom's soul go through a portal of light, and they're like, okay, you know, like kept like grieving. You know, it was a lot. It was kind of a big,
and you're like, no, I did.
Big mic to drop in the room with my mom's transitioned body. But no, it really was. It took my spiritual practice to a whole new level of like, okay, yeah, magic is real. Okay, this stuff is all real. You know, it was just like, I guess validating might be a word, but really just like almost, it's like when the veil gets pulled off, you know, and it had already been pulled off. You know, ayahuasca.
It was just confirmation.
It was, thank you, not validation, confirmation.
Yeah.
And also a calling. Curious. I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
That's that edge, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I love being curious and playful. And it's like, I think it was Gabby Bernstein who said this along, you know, I remember her saying this right around that time I started getting into Gabby Bernstein. And she said something like, you know, when haters, debaters, I'll say, kind of question, you know, the spiritual thing. And she's like, well, it's a lot more fun this way. And that really stuck with me. I was like, well, if I get to choose my life and these things are happening, heaven, yes, I'm going to believe in them. Heaven, yes, I'm going to trust in them. It's way more fun to believe in magic and to believe in infinite love.
Is that when channeling began for you or?
No.
Well,
let's see. That was 2000. So that was 2018. So channeling is a whole experience.
Yes, it is.
But when I started having psychic abilities, I would say it was when I was a young child. And I think that's
typical.
Yeah.
Right? Well, we're all born psychic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We just lose it along the way.
And
because our parents are like, no, Johnny, you do not have an imaginary friend. Okay, sure you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was classic that.
Tell him that we said hello, right?
Yeah. Like, yeah,
no, Johnny, let me take the crayon out of your hand. No, people aren't blue. They are peach. Their skin is peach, right?
Yeah.
Lots of conditioning.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist. And watching things like I make jokes about this all the time. Wizard of Oz was my favorite movie.
Oh my God, I loved Wizard of Oz. Still do.
I thought I was Dorothy, right? So
love it.
My mom would dress me in like pinafore dresses and like, curl my hair or like French braid it and then curl it at the ends with ribbons in it. Yeah. The whole thing.
Whole nine.
Yeah. 80s. Yeah.
Yes.
So, or 70s, I think at that point. But either way, I thought I was Dorothy, right? So watching that movie was celebratory when we were kids because we didn't have DVDs. We didn't have Netflix. You couldn't do it on demand. So it came, right, you watch the TV guide, your dad or whoever was in charge of your household would read the TV guide and they'd be like, oh, Wizard of Oz is going to be on Wednesday night at 6:00 or whatever, right? And then you're real excited for that. And then you sit down and you watch the whole thing because, you know, what else are you going to do in the 70s and the 80s? And there is a wizard in it. And at first, he's a psychic, right? And he, you know, you visit him in his wagon and he's kind of like out there and kooky.
That's right.
And he wears a turban on his head. And he's got a velvet tablecloth. And he's got a magic crystal ball. And he can see things in the magic crystal ball that you can't see. So I grew up thinking, well, that's special magic powers that other people can do that I just don't have the ability to do. Excuse me. And so I grew up thinking that the things that I was doing or seeing or knowing, excuse me, that everyone could do.
Right?
I normalized my behavior because I was like, oh, well, I'm not special. So I didn't know what psychic actually was.
Yeah, I don't think well, that's not true. I'm sure some people out there are raised by psychics, and so they're very aware of it.
Yeah, if you have that, right, and so let's get to that, right? If you have that weird grandmother that used to, have prophetic dreams, your mom's like, oh yeah, we had that aunt that used to, tell people's fortune, or you know what I mean?
I want it.
Right? I did too. I always was fascinated by it. But no one in my family believed that shit, right? They were fully, practicing religious in the sense of like, as an escape plan, in the sense of they wanted to make sure they didn't burn in hell. So that was kind of their way of, belief. But, that's how they embraced religion, but they didn't actually go to church or,
Yeah.
It's just like eternal damnation to keep you from doing anything bad, right?
Whew, yeah, talk about pressure.
Yeah. Oh,
Wow.
yeah, definitely religious pressure. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So very conservative upbringing and very religious in that regard. So, I think that I discounted a lot of the things that I can do. And it's only been since I've been, an adult in the last 10 years that really I'm like, I do things that other people don't do normally, or don't hear, or don't see, or don't, I have information.
I have information.
I have information that most people aren't paying attention to, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And it's so clear or so easy for me. And it's not easy for other people. And that's been interesting too.
I love it. I love that you're talking about this again, because it really is that unconditioning.
Yes.
It's that unconditioning again.
Yes.
That unbecoming.
Yeah. So you didn't have any psychic people around you. Neither did I.
Although I will say I had the forest.
I had the backyard, or I thought I was Laura Ingalls Wilder too. I was out on the prairie with the horse, disappearing.
Did you have a horse?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I didn't. My sisters did, and then I rode them, and
they're majestic.
That's a whole other story
because
they weren't mine, and I was too small, and they didn't listen to me, and they would just take off running, and so there was that too. But when I would go out, on my sister's horse, I could go out. I don't know. I don't know how old I must have been. Maybe by 4th grade, they would let me go by myself. Probably not. Maybe by 10 or 12, they would let me go by myself. Yeah, probably 10.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So I lived in rural southern Orange County back in the 70s and 80s. So this is, this has got to be like late 70s, early 80s. So there wasn't a lot around yet. It wasn't as developed as it is now.
That's cool.
So you could just ride out into the hills and disappear. So I didn't have necessarily forest, because I was out like in field, like a golden dry, grasses, so to speak. But but I could go out and get away and listen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally rings for me. Growing up in that competitive community and house. I will say my mom was super encouraging, and my dad. Oh my gosh, my dad was always very encouraging of us being outdoorsy. My dad was really encouraging of us of being outdoorsy. Mm-hmm. My mom was encouraging of us of being connected to the forest. She loved that forest and just the forest, right? Like the birds. Nature. She was a birder, nature.
Yeah.
She was definitely a huge environmental advocate. There's a lot to say there too.
Yeah.
But we grew up very environmentally conscious, and my dad would, teach us to fish, and I was crabbing by the time I was like swimming and crabbing by the time I could walk, probably, and fishing and canoeing. And I grew up very much immersed in nature.
Yeah, we did too.
So I felt the spirits of the land. And I would talk to them. And my mom was, just like you were saying, was like, who are you talking to, honey? And I was, it sounded like gibberish. And now I get like, oh, that was like light language. I think, after dating someone who grew up in the Christian church, he's like, oh, that's like speaking in tongues. And I'm like, whoa, what's that? And so it's interesting that there's like different ways of describing
the
it.
same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would talk to these. I had 3 specific spirits that I talked to often. And, I still feel them around me. And I don't think I've ever told anybody that. So here we are talking about vulnerability. But I really feel the spirits, especially that are of nature. I think that's any
intuitive.
I'm just gonna say it. Any good witch, right, or any witch. It's like, I think there's this quote that Starhawk, a famous intuitive and healer, said something about like, someone asked her if she was a witch, and she's like, well, she's like, yeah, I'm a witch. If you mean a woman who's connected to the land and the elements and can feel that coursing through my veins.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would kind of hide out in the woods. I would skip camp and go find, solace in the woods and make forts and make friends with frogs and
that's
get
what I would do.
Muddy and it's interesting.
I think that's what saved me.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it taught me a ton, because like I often, again, this is like something I don't really tell people, but I often speak with the wind, the earth, the fire, and absolutely the water. I will
the trees.
And the trees. Oh, the trees are the carry those. Actually, my favorite word is Sithrism, which means the sound the wind makes as it blows through the trees. Sithrism. Yeah. So I'm so grateful, right? Like, again, with the gifts and speaking back to love is like, because I felt unsafe, I found safety in this place that heightened all of my experience.
Yeah.
And I remember making some forts, and my best friend back then was 6 years older than me. And she was really my babysitter, but really we were just hanging out, making forts in the woods and having a ball, like doing all, getting the mud and really feeling the land. And she had gone to Hawaii and brought a grass skirt back with her. And so she's like, oh, we'll put it in on our fort. And I was like, okay, great. And I remember I was probably like 9. And in camp, we were trained to go find dog tags in the woods. Like, we were given coordinates, like GPS coordinates, and we would go and find the tags in the woods. And so I know, totally, we were like born and bred. Yeah. So one of the groups was out in the woods, boys group, I think, and they found, and there was an old farm. So I got these like old cow skulls and put them by our fort. So now you really paint this picture, right? We're out in the middle of the woods by a creek. There's a fort, a man-made fort, small, right? I was like 9, with
some cow skulls
and a grass skirt. It like screams witch, right? So the boys find it because they're looking for one of these dog tags, and they're like, oh my God. Of course, they're like, oh my God, a witch. There's a witch in the woods. And, it's like, of course, right? I would do the same thing. So they took the cow skull and the grass skirt and they put it into what we call the nature lab, which is like a place where, kids could go in and see, snakes and animals and fish and da-da-da. And experience things. It was great. Get them more connected to the land. And so I went in there one day to go visit the snakes, and because I loved
And there was your
snakes.
things.
And I was like, oh, my skirt, and and Jack's skirt, that was her name, and the woman who I would play with, the girl, and and there's our cow skull, and then of course immediately like whoever was in the nature lab turned at me, and they're like, she's the witch. So from a really early age, I remember getting like ousted in this elitist neighborhood as the witch at like 9, and was kind of outcasted. And it was like, what's hilarious now I've done a ton of healing on this, right? And I feel solid. And I absolutely love this neighborhood now. I want to say too, like when my mom fell, the amount of support that we had coming from the neighborhood was just incredible. And talk about a healing experience. Just like receiving that much love and support and care from so many people was just an incredible experience. But speaking to my childhood experience, it was hilarious because now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a sorceress. I'm a witch. Like whatever that means.
They saw it in you before you saw it.
I even knew what it was.
Yes.
I just saw them pointing their finger at me. And so, yeah, I know, it's October 25th. Like we're getting closer and closer to Samhain. And I know the witch wound has been coming up a lot in different realms. And it's like, yeah, it's really beautiful to be able to, and what a privilege to be speaking about this on some airwaves and just recognizing it's 2023, how far we've come.
Yes.
It's safe to speak, and not always safe, around the globe.
No.
But it's safe for us, and that's really a privilege.
It is.
It's a responsibility almost.
It is.
So,
yeah. Yeah. What a cool story. So back when you're 9, you could already hear spirits. Yeah,
I would say when I started getting, pointed at and like ousted and kind of, I think I started to shut it down more around then. Not necessarily for myself. I certainly was not like speaking to spirits at that point. But I think for me, it was always, for instance, like listening to the wind, never losing that, never losing that, hearing the fire, hearing the earth, feeling the water. There was something in me. It's in me, that HSP, that sensitivity, that I would, I think I always took for granted. Like you said, it's like, doesn't everyone experience this? And I believe they do, but it's like, maybe some of us to a more heightened experience.
Depends on your gifts.
Totally. Absolutely.
And your past lives, how those come through, right? Because it's just a process of awakening, right? As we're here. And so awakening to the fact that, you described being a witch. I was also a HSP. I'm an INFJ. In Myers-Briggs, so I'm pretty rare as a female, right? And so and painfully shy. If I talked to an adult, it would make me cry. So nature was my best friend. I was more comfortable with nature than I was with people.
Yeah.
And I think, it gave me solace because there was so much going on in my family all the time that I could escape, that I could at least go outside or into the backyard and go pick some fruit off the tree and, go play in the playhouse that my dad made, or go make a mud pie, or, go play with my Barbies. And I was just telling this story in a podcast recently. I had a little corner of the garden, and I would run the water down some river rock and pretend like there was a river. And I was always doing something outside.
Yes.
So where was I going with that? We were talking about knowing
our gifts.
Oh, yeah. Knowing our gifts and awakening to them, right?
Yeah.
So, I, I've done enough work around this to understand like how clairs come through, right? And I would say that when I was a kid, because I was in a household with a lot of trauma,
Mm.
your clairs tend to get amplified in that environment because
Oh, you don't say.
yes, because they're your
Yeah.
they are what save you, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
claircognizance was really, really strong and powerful, and so was clairsentience. I would know things, and I wouldn't understand why other people didn't know those things, right? Or I would walk into a room and know that something bad had just happened, and walk out of the room, for that reason. So I think that I just thought everybody else, again, was doing those things. But then as I got older, I realized, okay, well, I'm really drawn to plant medicine.
Hmm.
And as you continue to, delve into that, whatever that looks like for you here in this lifetime, talking about developing your gifts, that you start to realize maybe you do past life regression and you realize, okay, well, in that particular lifetime, I was a medicine woman,
Yes.
using them. No wonder I'm obsessed with, essential oils. And, when I was a kid, thought I was going to be a perfumist and would walk through, what are they called? Department stores on the corners of the mall. And as we were walking through the fragrance aisle, I would spray different perfumes as my mom was walking ahead of me, and then catch up with her and custom blend a fragrance and say, what do you think?
Oh, sweet.
Right. So like that is coming through. Not from this life. No one taught me that.
Right.
That's coming through from seriously my past, but just recognizing that, or being open to the idea that is something that no one taught me, and that is something that I'm gifted in that maybe you're not, but that is a gift of mine, right? That I've pulled through from many lifetimes and is serving me now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I love walking clients through the gifts, right? I'm really in that soul's purpose medicine.
Yeah,
like,
you
what
are.
is your soul purpose?
Yeah.
And by the way, like a lot of us are taught, again, with the conditioning, like, oh, my purpose is to be a, but really it's perhaps our purpose is to learn compassion and forgiveness. Perhaps a purpose is to, feel the channel of God. Perhaps the purpose is, and whatever that means, like maybe it's in singing, maybe it's in painting, maybe it's in race car driving. But, our purpose is so much more than this occupation. And I absolutely agree with you. It comes back to our gifts in so many ways. Like,
and the lessons that we wanted to learn as a soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. For me, compassion, forgiveness, among other things, but that's like base. That's the real essence of my purpose here.
Yeah.
Is to learn those things. That is not an easy route.
No,
not an easy
it's
route.
not.
But
I think mine was patience for sure.
Nice.
I already mentioned that.
Yeah.
Patience for sure, but also sharing love. I think that I was always so naturally gifted at sharing that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
That it just came naturally, no matter the circumstances. That I've always been really generous with that.
The world needs more. Yeah. But yeah, I really resonated with the HSP and heightening our gifts in our environments. And I've really appreciated that about my experience, my background growing up, that it is a gift. Because sometimes, and I have clients that are very sensitive. I mean, we're all sensitive in our own ways.
Yes.
And just to remind them that their sensitivity is a
Gift.
and how to see it that way
Yeah.
is the art, right?
Yeah.
But when we can, focus or channel ourselves in that route of love, of loving it, how is this a gift? And it's like our shadows are there to protect us, right? Our fears, I should say, are there to protect us. And really loving those fears and understanding that, it's actually a form of love is that point, right? And like, how can we love that, befriend our fear, and really, like I said this earlier, but just love all those parts so that those parts, those gifts, those sensitivities feel safe.
Yeah.
To come out and play.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of it is kinesthetic.
I'm kinesthetic too.
Yeah, clairsentience for sure. I mean, I could go down all the clairs and all that, but it's, speaking to channeling, it's like first feeling safe. It's very vulnerable.
Yeah, you have to feel safe. There's absolutely no way otherwise. Yeah, you have to feel safe in your body and in your environment.
Oh, yeah. And I've had experiences where, I've channeled for a pretty, like a lot of people, when it's relative, right? A lot. But, it's just like, okay, kind of like all or nothing here. It's that edge I was talking about, that like wild child that like, okay, I guess we're going to do this. And now I know to have some like spiritual bouncers and always setting up the container correctly.
Having good boundaries around it. I was just talking about this.
Yeah,
I was just talking about this, and I want to bend your ear about this because I talk about it a lot in social work during the day.
Ooh.
Because, I work with people who are mentally mental health challenged. And because of that, we have a Western diagnosis for what I consider channeling, which is schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia, yeah.
With poor boundaries.
Yeah.
And I will say my theory, but it's actually what I've come to understand, because I trust that, is that when we're kids, right, and we're in a unsafe environment, potentially, and we say, things like, please, 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 please come help me. I need help. Or we invite things into our space without actually having the proper education around what we might be inviting into our space, right?
Oh, yeah.
And now we've made friends with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I can't help, we've got Samhain, Halloween right around the corner. And it's just like, how many children are doing like seances right now?
Ouija boards.
I know. I'm like getting chills in my ears right now. Like,
you're revving your third eye.
Definitely. Yeah, I know. It's so funny. I'm totally wiping my third eye off. I should really be. It's a lot of our boundaries actually are in our solar plexus.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Oh, there's so much of that is happening right now, especially, and I know so many people are feeling that right now. The veils are thinning.
Very thin.
Very thin. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that we're powerful. We're very powerful. I joke with astrology. I even joked with you about like some Mercury retrograde hiccup.
Yeah.
I don't think Mercury is in retrograde right now, just to clarify. I was telling a story earlier, but I just remind people that it's a roadmap, right? Yes. It's a roadmap. Astrology is a roadmap. So that means that, for instance, with Mercury retrograde, it just means to slow down or to have make sure there's a little more space to navigate if we need to do technology or navigate to get somewhere, right? And just patience and slowing down. And, with something like now, just a remembrance a reminder that this is a remembrance of our ancestors, and to also be understanding that the veil is thinning and there might be a lot of information coming in right now. And so I was just reminded today, I have spiritual bouncers. And if you don't have a spiritual bouncer, whoever's listening, it's like, you're allowed to have that. You can just call that in. I always say, speaking of that and setting the containers, I always say spirits of the highest truth and compassion. And that's just kind of my go-to. It feels right for me. And so whatever feels right for those listening, but you have that power to call that in, and whether it's an angel, whether it's an animal guide. I have several, know, and it's lovely.
People don't know that they can ask.
Exactly. You're allowed. You have permission to
You can ask for whatever it is that you need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and they don't even know how.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to believe we're worthy of it too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that's like core beliefs. And so that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. And something similar. I just say spirits of the highest good and intention for all. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Same, different. Mm-hmm.
So with channeling,
mm-hmm.
it's, I really appreciate space. And oh man, I could get like super nerdy woo. I love where science meets woo. But to my feeling and understanding of it, the space is essentially where the electrons are bouncing around. We have the protons and in the nucleus, right? It's like there's that's like kind of the denser part, right? And then around that are the electrons quantum leaping. And it's a negative charge, so that's space, literally space. And if we can listen to that space, right, and that negative charge, and we believe we're worthy, right, and we're open to the greatest possibilities, there's so much opening, right, then we can essentially attract whatever we want into us. I believe that this is what manifestation is.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we have worked on our core fear beliefs
mm-hmm.
to really reprogram and understand our worthiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the shadow work and loving and becoming whole.
Mm-hmm.
So with manifestation and even channeling, it's feeling that space. With channeling, it's like becoming open and also recognizing quite literally the channel. And I have a practice that I do multiple times a day of really harnessing into the earth and reaching up. Yeah. It's
I do it as well.
Yeah, great. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're quite literally creating these channels.
Yeah.
And so when we're open to it with our spiritual bouncers, and hopefully, it's nice to have other sorceresses and priestesses or priests and wizards, which
the
is
power of intention.
Empowerment of intention around to cultivate that container, calling in the different elements. I think calling in the directions is lovely. I don't always do that, but I think it is quite lovely and,
Mm-hmm.
and intentional.
Mm-hmm.
But really just believing and trusting. And it's what's the intention, right? Like, where's my intention? And so I love channeling through voice, through singing, and also in my coaching practice, getting messages. It's a little more subtle, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But I love channeling with my sound bowls. And it, speaking of the
Gifts.
times, it's like Cerdwin is the goddess of the cauldron. And I feel like this, white witch, like spinning.
I'm a white witch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just calling it in. And I've had some really profound experiences. Now I have, you asked about channeling earlier. I do remember having a channeling experience that I didn't know all of this. This was like in my 20s. I had an episode where I wasn't expecting it. And I got taken over by a deceased famous person. It was pretty wild, and I'll just leave it at that. But oh man, I'm like, do I say this? Do I say this? I got overtaken by Janis Joplin. And what's so funny to me now is like, I then like got into a band and like became a front woman in a 8-piece band and all that. And it was just like, I kind of like eye rolling because it's hilarious to me. But I remember getting written up in the paper, a review, and it was like Janis Joplin without the SoCo. And I remember my reaction to that was like, what? Like without the SoCo. I mean, I was a very different person back then, but it was just so funny to me. Like, yeah. And I had a whole experience of clearing that out, which is a wild story. But so now I'm so much more intentional. I have tools, I have practices. It's kind of like, don't fuck around.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Like magic is real.
Yes.
Like what's your intention?
And it's all around you.
It is all around you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just to trust, and trust in the intentions. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love channeling different nature, like, gosh, I remember I channeled a praying mantis once. That I wasn't expecting that. It just came through, and it was like such a cool, very strange, very weird, and very cool experience. But also birds and angels and healing experiences. And yeah.
So when did that open up again for you? How old were you? Or when did that happen? Or was it a significant experience? Because you said you kind of shut it down after you were called a witch, right?
Yeah, shut it down. Honestly, I think psychedelics really opened that back up.
Yeah.
And I heard you say plant medicine earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I have no problem saying this. Like, we were talking about confirmation earlier. When I first did DMT, I looked up and the ceiling, I was in my bedroom. The ceiling in my bedroom is stuccoed or, like.
Oh, yes.
It has texture.
Yes.
It's not, just
is it
flat
white?
plate.
Is it white?
It's white.
Yes.
And that became a lace curtain of sorts. And an angel was flying above it like this. And I had a whole conversation. I was like, oh, hey, you're there. Yeah, of course you're there. Like, and everyone, no one else was doing it with me. They were all holding space. And there were 3 other people in the room. And I tried to explain, to you in the room. I was like, quick, that they're there, right? They're there all the time. Of course you're there all the time. And thanks for the hi, nice to see you. Yeah, I was having a whole conversation. So I would agree. Yeah, psychedelics definitely remove the barrier and get the ego. Put the ego on hold or silence, on do not disturb. Yes. Temporarily enough for us to go, oh yeah.
No, not to freak anyone.
Not that I didn't even know that, but I did know that. But thank you for showing it to me again, because I really do know that.
Yeah. Remember.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not to freak anyone out, but I was doing quite a bit of psychedelics in my 20s and in festivals and, much different than, what we're speaking to of plant medicine.
Right.
Even though it is that.
Yes.
It's just, but really it's like, what's the intention?
Yeah.
And
my intentions were a little different back then.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like, speaking to like exploration and experience and really finding ourselves again, right? It's like, yeah, I'll try that. And so that experience with Janis Joplin, I was on a lot of mushrooms. Maybe not a lot, but
a lot for you.
A lot for me in that moment.
Yeah.
More than I was expecting to be. And so, just like recognizing that these allies, the plants, the mushrooms, the fungus, it becomes an ally and like an attraction for the channel.
Yep.
And so like I didn't know it was coming. I wasn't expecting that. And, that was like a whole thing. Like I felt a little violated, to be honest, but, I wasn't calling her in.
Right.
It happened.
As you should. Yeah.
Right. And, I've had other kind of pretty incredible experiences before I understood, before my yogi practice, before I started meditating, before I really started understanding
what was happening
and what can happen.
Yeah.
Right. With the power of intention.
Right.
The power of intention.
Yeah.
So once the intention got on board and, my spiritualism and really believing in angels and it kind of took it to another level. I think I'm trying to remember, like my first ayahuasca experience was really intense and really profound.
Was it?
Oh, it was so intense and profound. And it's like, we'd probably need a whole nother like part 2 for that. But I will say it was really hard. I hadn't done a lot, or maybe I'm like, had I done a lot? I think I had started working on going through, the earlier sexual assault, abuse that I had experienced too many times, as many women do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of unprocessed healing to do. And so that really came through. And what I really remember is the moment of surrender, of trusting. And I could feel a lot, like quite a few, like probably like 20 hands on me. Like, okay, are you done having your like fit? Like, which I needed to have. I needed to have that really intense purge of and fear. I mean, it was like my full-on panther came out, and like wounded panther, and nobody wants to fuck with a wounded panther.
No.
But once she became,
sorry, that was the nickname that I was given in my sorority. Yeah.
Way.
Yeah. Black Panther. Yeah. Pantera. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because my entire family of the women that, I was in was all cats. They were all cats. Anyways, keep going.
Love it.
I keep interrupting you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's like, powerful.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was healing, and I remember like, I remember going through, like really going through it. And then the wound started to kind of heal. And I remember maturing, I kind of sat up even. And from that place, I remember hearing what I believe was God say, okay, you can have whatever you want. And I remember questioning it. Whatever I want? Yes. And I was like, well, I want wings. And so the panther suddenly, has wings. And I looked at them, and they were owl wings, because I'm also very connected with owl. From a really early age, like infancy.
Me too.
Love it. And I looked at them and I was like, actually, not those wings, different wings. And all it took was just a tiny little flutter of my shoulders, like minuscule. And I was like,
yep.
All the feathers turned to scales, which were like iridescent, green, pink. And I realized like, oh, of course, this is what a dragon would be. It would actually have like fish scales, and it was just like literally like whatever I wanted. When I got to that point, I remember feeling that that trust in it all. And then it was like, okay, well, we need you now. And then I remember feeling all these hands lay me down. And oh my gosh, am I really about to say this? I'm going to just tell you. I became a portal. Oh my gosh, I'm like, I became a portal for lost souls to come through my heart and my solar plexus, like right in between. And it was like I had to surrender my body, but I had all this healing to do around my body being taken. And then here I am surrendering completely fully to serve others. It was just such an incredible experience of service, and it was like birthing, right? And it was just like, wow, when we can really surrender and trust, we can really heal and heal others. And it was just like, they were like, yeah, the first one, it was like a real birth. And then it was like, okay, I can do this. Like, let's go. And just to really feel in that surrender, the power of coming home to peace. It's like that white ceiling became the white buffalo. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did we get here?
We were talking about ayahuasca.
I know, ayahuasca.
I'll pull it to my experience. Will that make you feel better?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we had a similar experience in the sense that, well, in one way. Or a couple of ways. So my ayahuasca experience, I waited probably almost 15 to 20 years after the first time I heard somebody talk about it until I found the right environment and the right circle to do it with.
Yes. And
I did not have well, maybe I had a conversation with God, but my eyes were open the entire time. And the person leading, actually both people leading the ceremony, kept whispering to each other about the fact that I wasn't going in deep enough.
That was like my first time.
So they kept
first night
trying to give me more.
Yeah. So just real quick, my first night was that, and what I just described was my second night.
Okay.
Because it wasn't really kicking in, but I did have some experience. But yeah, it was interesting.
Oh, I had a great experience.
Yeah,
I was having a great time.
Yeah.
But my eyes were wide open.
Me too. My first time. So
I was checking in on everybody and watching other people's experiences and talking to the higher selves.
Mm-hmm.
I had a whole conversation with the tree outside the window. I had a conversation with the sun for probably, I don't know, a good amount of time. Like I was talking to everything, and that was my experience. And I closed my eyes because I think they came by and gave me more, and that might have been either they suggested it or whatever. Or I was like, okay, I'll surrender. Like they keep thinking that I'm going to find something that I haven't actually touched as a Scorpio. And I was like, all right, let's do this. So I closed my eyes, and I'll just say that I saw the serpent.
Wow.
And the serpent had claws, kind of like a crab. So more like a scorpion crab meets a serpent. I'll just say that. And immediately, similar to your experience, I said, what is it that I need to know? And she said, you already know.
Ooh.
And I said, okay, well, then I'm done here. And I opened my eyes again.
Great. Next.
Thanks.
Yeah. Next, please.
Thanks for permission.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go back to talking to the sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
As the sun was setting. Yeah. So that was my experience. So similar or same, different. Again.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful experience. I came to so much awareness and understanding and forgiveness. I mean, it's hard to access this because it's been, several years, but so much awareness and compassion and understanding for everyone who had ever touched my life. I did go through like almost like what you would do at the end of your life. Right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I traveled through most of my life and through all of the relationships around me currently, right? And saw all of the gifts and saw all of the different lessons right? So it was very healing in that regard.
Yeah.
But I'm being completely honest. Maybe I have a ton of resistance. I had a whole conversation afterwards about this, but I feel like similar to you, I've done a lot of work. I'm not saying there isn't more to do. I've done a lot of work, and I've also done a lot of psychedelics. So going in, I wasn't like, and back to the intention, I was like, what is this about?
Yeah.
And that's what I want my experience to be. Not, I'm trying to figure out this thing.
Right.
Let's get to the bottom of that. So my purging process was very minimal in that regard.
Yeah, it's funny. What I described to you as my second night and actually my first night. So did you do 2 nights in a row? Okay. So for those listening, a lot of times Aya is done
in 2 nights.
2 nights, 2 night sits, sometimes even like
3
or
week 5
longs.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's also something, some ayahuasqueros will also give mushrooms one night, but
yes, or frog medicine or
right.
combo or
So, oh yes, I've actually had combo after an Aya ceremony, and that was the purge. So, but anyway, just to circle back,
pretty hard not to purge on combo, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of the point.
Yeah, that's maybe like little like off mic conversation.
Yeah,
pretty wild. But my first night ever. Very similar experience. I went in wanting to know about trust, and everyone was having these experiences. I was doing yoga. I wasn't
doing yoga.
I was like,
I was sitting there. I was crying at some point.
Yeah.
Right? I was giggling.
Yeah.
I was just having a great time. Yeah.
Point being, it wasn't hitting me, and I've been told that grandmother Aya, she beckons us deeper and deeper and deeper. And you can start to feel her roots, right? Like, because it's a root. It's from from a tree.
Yeah.
And it's like or a vine. And you can feel it just, I start feeling it like in the depths of my intestines and my gut. But I've heard that she just, it's just everyone's experience is just different.
Yes.
Depending on, where you're at or what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember the same thing. They were like, are you resisting? Are you, because I could hold a conversation. And, I remember
I couldn't hold the conversation well. And I definitely, they gave me more. And I definitely, I was laughing because I was like, oh, because they kept saying, are you all in? And I was like, I'm in. And it would make me just bust up, and I could hear myself talking, and I sounded completely intelligible. And I was having a hard time understanding them as well. But it didn't need to because like I was already just talking to them.
Yeah, I mean, you're having conversations with the sun. So.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't hitting. And
it was.
I had 5 cups.
Okay, I had 2.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah.
And that's like
everything was melting. I mean, I was like you. Like that's why I was laughing because I said I don't think you can get me higher, but I don't even know if those words came out of my mouth. Right? It sounded like gibberish when I said it. I said it, but yeah, you know what I mean. It was very hard to talk.
Right. And so my point is I had 5 cups and it wasn't hitting. And it was like, I really felt her just beckoning me deeper and deeper and deeper. And it was like, okay. So it finally hit on that first night. And what I experienced was actually a birthing. And I remember, and I've heard this, it happens, you know, people experience their own birth, and it was like my birth, but also suddenly I felt like the pinnacle of time, and it could go backwards or forwards, and I could feel all my female line, my ancestry, and I could feel the DNA. I could feel my DNA. And why I wanted to speak to this, because I think it's pretty cool and important, is I could feel that there was a choice to break the chains of the DNA.
Yeah.
And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That it's like we have a choice.
Yeah.
Right. And it was shown to me in that moment. And it was like, I'm here now. And I know we've been talking about, you know, our past and it's like, whatever it is that, you know, those shadows, like love them up. But the patterns, like they get to stop with us. And they get to stop and we get to break those. Like, and that's a choice, y'all. Like
we can be a transitional character.
We get to be a transitional character if we choose to be. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're going to be, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really profound. And I think that, you know, me, and oh, by the way, I did not purge the first night. I purged in tears, but I did not, you know, and purging happens in many ways. But
yeah, I blew my nose a bunch.
Yeah, I think
I went to the restroom multiple times. Yeah.
But I think that's why my second night was so intense, was because she was still just kind of settling in.
Yeah. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, pretty wild. But I had experiences where it was like, you're a pillar of light. My most recent I experience was, you're a pillar of light. And it was like 5 cups in, you're a pillar of light. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I was
Aya.
like, you're an oracle. I'm like, I know.
Cool. I'm sitting with an oracle. Cool. Can you feel it? I can feel it. It's a sparkle. I told you I'm a hype queen, right?
Oh, you're funny.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Me too. I mean, I feel like we could talk for another 3 hours.
Easy.
Yeah, I know. Right? I just, at a certain point, it's like, why even go to the questions? It was so interesting. And you answered most of it. Is there anything on here? Yeah. We talked about integration. We talked about intuitive gifts and you being a spiritual channeler. Yeah. And your mountain biking event. Yeah. How do you feel we can incorporate more love and compassion into our lives?
Yeah. I've spoken to the shadow and, you know, loving up those parts and becoming whole. And it's like, okay, great, you know, but really having a practice of opening our heart, I think is really, really profound and important and really helpful. And it can be as simple as taking a deep breath. And it also allows space, right? So a lot of us need space to feel safe. And it's really just even in a conversation with someone, it's like, you're allowed to take a breath. you don't have to answer or react or respond right away, right? So even just taking a breath can quite literally help us open our lungs, soften our shoulders open. But then taking that a little farther is I like to spin my heart chakra open. And also, some don't know this, but for me, at least, this feels very true. Is the chakras spin on the front, and they also spin on the back.
Yes,
and they spin kind of like clockwise in the front, clockwise in the back, so they're kind of spinning opposite.
Yes.
So for me, what I have a very consistent throughout the day practice, which I'm practicing. Right? It's a practice. Everyone, like, practice makes progress.
Yeah. Not perfect.
No, because, I'm perfect is imperfect. I'm perfectly imperfect human.
You are.
And so I check in with my heart. It's as simple as that. So yes, there's like the woo-woo, spiritual energy medicine tools, right, that we can practice of, is my heart spun open? Well, also, I like to remind myself, and of course, like, this is from the work I've done, it's safe to open my heart. I know that might not be true for everyone, right? Because we don't always feel safe, but just checking in, is my heart open? Can I take a deep breath to open my heart a little more? And that becomes a place and a vessel and a portal of receiving as well, giving and receiving. And I think it is really receiving trust, trust in ourselves, trust in the universe. And it reminds me of that question that Albert Einstein asked, is your universe a friendly one? And for me, it is. My universe, I've chosen that. And it is a choice to choose that and trust in that. And so just to remind myself, my heart is open. I trust. And just to have, a sense of safety. And if I don't feel safe, how can I regain that so I can feel like my heart is open? But yeah, opening my heart is a daily, throughout the day practice.
I love that. I'll also add that we receive energy from behind us, and it flows through us and out the front.
I love that you said that, because what I've been practicing is, it's safe to open the back of my heart.
Because if you have any trauma, a lot of times you don't like surprise. You don't like someone coming up behind you.
Yeah, and it's that feeling of being backstabbed, like so many of us have, right? Like, okay, I can open the front of my heart, but can you open the back? It's a whole nother ball game.
And same with the throat. So singing.
Yeah, talk about being vulnerable.
Releasing out, right? But actually, and I don't know that you know this, I've talked about it a couple of times, I think, maybe not on the podcast, but the back is called the mouth of God.
Ooh, I don't know that. Yummy.
And that's how you channel, because your ear chakras are connected to your throat chakras. So if you're not open in the back of your throat chakra, you're not able to hear.
I love that it's called the mouth of God. Ooh.
Right?
You just heightened my practice.
Right?
So here's something that I think you'll just really appreciate. I was talking about the practice that I do every day. I didn't give it a name, but it's from a specific healer. And essentially, it starts with the Dantian, going down into the earth. And this is not the same as the chakral system. For those listening, chakral system, they're gates, they're open gates. These are like harnessed walnuts of energy, this different line. And so there's the Dantian, it goes into the earth, and then it comes up. There's a walnut in our solar plexus area, which is called the core star. And then there's this walnut, harnessed energy right here between our collarbones, which is between the open gate of our heart and the open gate of our throat, should we so choose to open them. And this is called the soul seat, which is known to carry our destiny. And I just love that it's like the bridge, right? Like
Your heart chakra is actually the bridge.
Well, but that's
It's the bridge between the lower chakras and the upper chakras.
But what you're talking about is the chakral system.
Right.
I'm
No,
talking
I know.
about a different
I get that.
system.
But I think it's interesting that they're in the same area.
Oh, yeah. Right. Because I literally see the bridge. And it's like this system is, again, they're not open portals. They're like harnessed walnuts. And so it's so amazing to really believe, right? So what you're saying with the bridge of the heart, right? But then the heart to the throat. And in between lies our destiny. It lies our soul's seat.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
It makes so much sense.
Because how energy moves through our bodies, through the chakra system, right? We receive, we see it, we start to speak about it, we know how to feel about it. As the energy continues to move down, we know what to do about it. We know how to act on it. We know how to plant it in the ground. So that's when your channel is open. That's how energy moves. And if your heart isn't open, then you get caught up either in your thoughts or if you want that to open, then you have to start to talk about what you're thinking about. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. To me, the soul seat, again, it's a different system than the chakral system.
Totally.
But it's like, the power of, aligning, opening, and then really listening to our heart to speak our truth.
Right.
Is our destiny. And it's like our words, our vibrations, their mantras, going out. And I've heard that the vibrations will go out into space, into the universe. And it's just pretty profound because it keeps helping us open to our truth, to speak our truth, whether that's boundaries, whether that's love, whether it's whatever,
whatever we're sharing.
Whatever is a podcast. And it keeps pointing us home. Yeah. That's so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Our destiny.
Yeah. The soul seat.
The soul seat.
Next to the mouth of God.
Yeah. And